Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're exploring why feeling like an alien in your own skin might actually be your absolute greatest superpower. We're taking a deep, structured look at evolutionary sensitivity and the sheer power of spiritually perceptive living. So, if you walk through your days feeling like the volume of the world is just cranked up to an unbearable maximum, well, the insights we're about to unpack are going to be incredibly illuminating for you.
Seriously, I want you to ask yourself, do you ever feel entirely alone in a sea of normal? You know, like a chameleon constantly changing colors, desperately trying to blend into a society that just feels way too loud, abrasive, or honestly completely foreign to your core nature? If you're nodding your head right now, knowing exactly what that exhausting daily performance feels like, listen up. The source material we're analyzing today suggests you aren't an outlier at all. Actually, you're part of a quiet, evolving revolution.
Author Alyce Dylan makes a profound and honestly liberating promise about this exact feeling. She says, quote, "There is nothing wrong with you. If you answered yes to feeling fundamentally out of sync with society, the central thesis of our sources is that your sensitivity is definitely not a flaw. It's not some disorder you need to fix. It is a highly tuned instrument, and figuring out exactly how this instrument works, that's your very first step to reclaiming your power."
So if you are what the text calls sixth-sensed, your daily reality probably looks a whole lot like this. And we're talking about experiences that go way beyond standard human empathy. It's walking into a room and instantly, unavoidably, feeling its subtle mood before anyone even opens their mouth. It's experiencing this visceral, almost physical pain in your gut when you witness an injustice. And think about this crazy paradox, craving incredibly deep, authentic connections, while at the very same time needing intense, uninterrupted solitude just to recharge your batteries. It's sensing truth physically, like getting literal chills or goosebumps, and frequently needing to completely drown out the noise of the world just to find a baseline of peace. The absolutely crucial point here is that you are not a broken, normal person. Not even close. According to the genetic and historical framework we're exploring, you're actually sitting right at the leading edge of human evolution. This sensitivity isn't some medical defect to be medicated away so you can squeeze into a rigid, uncomfortable little box. Rather, it's an additional stream of vital, energetic information. Basically, you're processing way more data about your environment than the average person does.
To put this into a wider perspective, recent studies cited in the text estimate that a massive 15 to 20% of humanity actively possesses this sixth sense today. The other 80%? They operate primarily as five-sensed individuals, or what the text refers to as normals. Now, this data point is deeply vital because it proves you aren't entirely alone. You're part of a huge demographic, literally 1 in 5 people experiencing a profound sensory divide from the majority. So, when you feel misunderstood, it's simply because you're speaking an energetic language that 80% of the population hasn't even learned yet.
All right, let's move into our next section, the genetic off switch, and why the world feels so hostile.
So, recent research, including a really fascinating study by Braden's team, reveals this massive historical twist. If we look back to the centuries prior to the Inquisition, people with extreme sensitivities, like the healers and the deeply intuitive, were largely accepted and seamlessly integrated into their communities. But then, during the Inquisition, there was a systematic, brutal targeting of these exact intuitive traits. The study suggests that terrifying institutional events literally pruned these sensitivities right out of the human gene pool over hundreds of years. The people with the deepest connections were eliminated, driving these traits underground, which led us into a modern era defined by deep genetic suppression. But it wasn't just institutional control causing this suppression. It was also basic human biology. Because, let's be real for a second, if you're completely focused on sensing the vast, energetic frequency of the universe, well, you're definitely going to miss the very physical, very hungry tiger standing right in front of you. Evolution had to step in. It actively created a genetic off switch for a highly practical reason. Early humans needed to focus on immediate physical survival threats. If you're too busy reading the energetic vibrations of a forest, you might get eaten. So, this beautiful trait was temporarily suppressed purely for our physical survival.
Which brings us to our next section, 5 senses versus 6 senses, a clash of fundamental worldviews.
This evolutionary divide creates two completely incompatible ways of experiencing daily reality. The five-sensed worldview, utilized by 80% of the population, is entirely material and action-oriented. It runs on the rigid, logical rule that seeing is believing, focusing exclusively on physical stuff first. On the flip side, the sixth-sensed worldview is inherently energetic and intuitive. A sixth-sensed person just knows deeply that feeling is knowing. They process the energetic frequency of an environment long before they ever notice the physical objects sitting in it. So you can immediately see why a highly intuitive person feels chronically drained when they're forced to play by the rules of a strictly material world. It is quite literally like trying to run advanced software on outdated hardware. To bridge this immense gap and successfully navigate all that chaos, the source material introduces a vital concept called eudaimonic resonance. This is the guiding principle that life naturally leads you forward to growth and happiness if you simply follow what feels better. Think of it exactly like a plant instinctively reaching towards the sunlight. It doesn't overthink it, right? It just leans towards the warmth. Because sixth-sensed individuals simply cannot rely on the rigid, action-oriented rules of the five-sense majority, they absolutely have to rely on this eudaimonic resonance. It requires deeply, radically trusting your internal compass for every major decision in your life.
Moving on to our final section, spiritually perceptive living, transitioning from surviving to thriving.
This brings us to a profound truth rooted in quantum physics. Your attention and observation physically alter reality. That is massive. It means your focused frequency is your absolute greatest, most tangible tool. Where you place your attention directly shapes your lived experience. You aren't just passively absorbing a harsh world. You actually have the biological and energetic capability to actively mold it. So how do we put that power into practice every single day? Well, by adopting this incredibly practical sixth sense toolkit. Step 1. Ground frequently in nature. Seriously, go hug a tree or at least stand barefoot in the dirt to literally discharge the static you've picked up and reset your nervous system. Step 2. Because you process so much external data, you must consciously filter your receptors. You do not need to absorb the angry energy of the guy screaming in traffic, just block it out. Step 3. Surround yourself with natural materials like silk, linen, and cotton. The texts specifically note that synthetics hold static and are energetically abrasive to a sensitive system. And Step 4. Actively tune your frequency to what brings you joy, fully leaning into that plant reaching for sunlight eudaimonic resonance we just discussed.
Now, the source material does issue a stark, unavoidable warning. Pretending to be normal when you are exceptional makes you morally inconsistent with yourself. You've got to stop chopping off your finest instincts just to squeeze into a five-sense society. Masking your true nature just to make other people feel comfortable, it's not only exhausting, it fundamentally blocks your entire path to happiness and purpose.
So, I'll leave you with this final provocative thought. Now that you know your sensitivity isn't a flaw, but actually a profound evolutionary advantage, how will you choose to live? Are you ready to stop acting like a chameleon, fully embrace your sixth sense, and step into the spiritually perceptive life you were literally born to lead?